Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in the studio today are two of our panelists who are ready to explain all things gardening and tackle your questions. But first, let's have them introduce themselves. Chuck, we'll start with you.
All right, I am Chuck Voigt, not so recently retired from the Department of Crop Sciences at the University of Illinois. I was a horticulturist there. Vegetable crops and herbs were my specialties professionally, but I had the full gamut as an undergraduate. So
I tell you what,
we'll try almost anything.
I have heard so much chatter about Chuck's planting schedule. Apparently, that was a very coveted thing that a lot of your students have been wanting for like decades. And so we've gotten so much feedback about Chuck's coveted planting schedule.
And you were here when it was given out.
Yes, I mean, they couldn't believe you gave it so freely. So I just want you to know, you made a lot of people's planting season this year. So
well,
we'll see how it goes,
We're gonna have to
right?
get that online so everybody can check it out.
Yes, yes. All right, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm Shane Coulter. I'm one of the family of owners at Country Arbors Nursery. We've been in the nursery business since 1865, so I've kind of grown up in this industry my whole life. I'm now retired, but as I told my wife, you can take the man out of the plants, but you can't take the plants out of the man. So I'm not there every day. I'm working in my garden. I actually went to the nursery today to grab a couple things and to go look at the place. I kind of stay away because it's kind of feast or famine. You just have to let everybody do their thing.
Yes.
And it's been wonderful. Now I get to see what everybody else does on the other side of the camera.
And working in your own yard for fun and leisure.
I can't believe it. I mean, normally when I'm planting, I'm running and I'm digging a hole and throwing it in and then getting back in, and now I actually get to look at it.
Yes.
It's
totally
you guys,
different.
Gardening is pretty fun.
It is.
I actually get to do it now.
You know,
so.
when you're not doing it 50, 60
When you're
hours
not-
a week,
yeah,
right?
it's cobbler's son has no shoes. Well, now I've got some shoes.
There you go. Okay. Well, you guys brought a lot of great stuff in. So, Chuck, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, we've talked about asparagus and your inability to wait 3 years to pick it. And when you were out at the farm with me, we looked at my new little row, and I was crabbing that I'd never seen anything less impressive than the roots that they sent me. It was a special deal, 10 each of 2 kinds for a bargain price. And they were literally the size of nut cup doilies. They were just teensy. But I planted them, and I got 18 of 20 to grow. And I've been tending them, keeping them weed-free, fertilizing them. And we actually harvested for, well, it was like 3 weeks, but because it got so cold. And as you can see, the spears are still nice and thick. And we probably could have gone beyond that, but I want to give it, at least one more season to grow up the fern and capture a lot of energy and store it in the roots. And just for the heck of it, I went back to make sure I could say the right varieties, because there is a fairly noticeable difference. This thicker one is called Millennium Hybrid.
Millennium Hybrid.
And this is one that's been around for a while, Jersey Night. They're both predominantly male, but they don't say all male anymore because they're only like 75%. And I noticed last year that I did get a few berries on some that have to be females. As Shane pointed out, these are probably a little larger than you would want to harvest them. But since I quit harvesting, these were the 2 most compact ones that I could find. You can tell when the tip starts to expand like that, they're getting a little past. This one was still very tender at the base. This one maybe not quite as much, but if you worry about that, you can just snap it off, and where it snaps is it's tender from there on up. I'm so proud. My nephew in Boulder planted some roots this spring in his garden. He's really become quite a gardener. So the the Voigt blood has passed that on to another generation. But this is
very nice.
Very, very nice and kind of unexpected, given what I saw when I opened the package, because I was grumbling pretty heavily. But I think
they surprised you, hey?
I think you should make a resolution to take those 2 years off and then be a little circumspect that third year and then go crazy.
And then just go crazy.
Because you're relatively young, If a guy as old as I am can wait till the third year to harvest, I mean, it should be a piece of cake for you.
It's been our running joke every year. I just refuse to plant it because I can't. I know I won't. I know I won't be able to wait. So
Yeah.
I'll just keep eyeballing yours from afar, Chuck.
Well, come up and visit it every once in a while, and boy, keeping it weed free is really the ticket, because my old row has been grassed over and poison ivy tries to get in among it, and it's kind of shaded. So, given the weather we've had, that stayed cool and has only just recently started to grow. This started in April, early April, because it was on bare soil right in the sunshine. So.
Gotcha.
Location makes a difference.
Location. Okay. All right, Shane, we're going to go to you. What's your first?
All right. I mean, I won't lie. You had me at nut cup doily. I mean, I consider myself old,
Just wanted to.
but I'm taking that one home. I have no idea what a nut cup doily is. If anybody wants to
I made a
send me
mental
one,
note.
yeah, like if you want to send me a nut cup doily, I'd be proud to have that. So if you get anything out of this show, that is a beautiful world that you can bring out for your children. All right, so I brought, in the world of shade plants, everybody thinks of host. We get kind of bogged down in the same plants over and over. But one of the great plants is called Brunera, and there's a lot of great varieties of Brunera out there. But what people forget is the straight variegated Brunera is one of the most beautiful leaves out there. It grows perfectly in the shade, doesn't need a lot of water. And it grows prolifically. It doesn't really heave in the winter. There's just a lot of great aspects of the original variegated form. And the price is half of the other forms. So it's a lot cheaper than the other ones, grows just as well, and has beautiful color. And the new ones might have a little bit more silver to them or less green in general and have other bright colors. To me, this is still one of the best. So
Size-wise, when it's fully mature, what are we looking at?
yeah, so they get pretty good size. This leaf probably is not indicative of how big it's going to get. It'll probably get as big as my hand. And it'll probably get a foot and a half, and as wide, depending on the situation. What they do when you have shade, obviously they're competing against trees, so you can maybe put a little bit more water to it. It can get a little bigger. And I don't say sitting in water, but that's the one thing about shade plants is they're in the shade because they're shaded usually by trees, and trees love to compete against them. So anytime you have shade plants and you want them to grow a little faster, keep out the weeds, which there's generally not as many weeds because it's in the shade, but the roots of the trees take up and compete for water. So that's a really good alternative if you're looking for something besides hosta in the shade and not a coral bell.
Very nice. And not the flower, the little dainty flowers.
Yeah, I didn't even
It's really
mention that
pretty.
it looks like a myosotis flower, kind of like a little blue flower, and they're really pretty, and they stand out really nicely against the foliage. I'm glad you mentioned that because the flowers are really pretty.
And you mentioned it can take a little abuse, a little
Yeah,
neglect.
it's pretty hardy. Yeah, it's not something. It does burn, so it's not going to be in the sun. If you have something that gets afternoon sun, keep it in the shade. It's not going to like that at all. Bright colors come generally from not getting burned. And I'll put this out there, hostas are the opposite. They turn more white with more sun. So it's not the case here, so I don't want to confuse people.
Yes.
But hostas, you see these really heavily white varieties, those can take more sun and actually get more white with the sun. This is the opposite, this will burn.
Okay.
And it's vigorous, but not
Yeah, it's not
super aggressive.
overtaking. It's not like snow in the mountain or some of these other plants that are legacy
Going
plants.
in with a hatchet.
Meaning you'll have them forever and your neighbors will too. No, it's not that.
You better put a sidewalk around them or they're going to take
Absolutely,
over.
that's the only like a copper edge to stop them from going. Yeah.
Maintenance-wise, do we cut them back in the fall?
Yeah. So at the end of the year, they will kind of turn what I call the old lettuce. So as they
Yes.
get cold and you just kind of scrape that off. And I cover everything with 3 inches of mulch, but there won't be really anything over the winter. Like a coral bell will have this little nugget, and this doesn't have it. It dies to the ground. So there's really, again, not too much maintenance. Just mulching it in with a nice warm blanket of mulch.
Very nice. It's very pretty too.
Yeah, it stands out in the garden. We've always got dark mulch generally, and we have shade. And what shines better in shade than a bright leaf?
Yeah, that is gorgeous. Okay. All right, Chuck, we're back to you.
Okay. Well, then at the same time I planted this asparagus, I planted 2 new kinds of rhubarb.
Okay.
Got them from the same place. Also a special deal. I was happier with this one, although it was amazing. One of them, it was like they had this giant root and they just kind of sliced off a bud and sent it to me.
Yeah. That's how you divide it. You just literally cut it with a knife and ship it. Yeah.
True, this one was a little more aggressively cut than some that I've seen, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
So you receive those as a root, like
It was
much like the asparagus?
Yes, a slice of root with 1 or 2 buds on it.
Okay.
So I planted those, and unlike the asparagus, which you plant deep and then gradually fill in, so, which makes it easier to cultivate for the first several years. With this, you plant the bud just kind of at ground level, because that's where it needs to be. This I went for red. This is Canada red, which gets, as you can see, very nice large petioles. I took off the leaf blades so it didn't wilt. There's an acid in here, so when you're doing this, you take that off and you clean up the bottom a little bit. But that, there's nice red in that and lots of productivity. This one doesn't seem to get as large petioles, but they are very red. And this one is actually internally red. So when you cook this one, you really get a nice pinky red sauce, as opposed to a really green one where it comes out, I think I've said that before, grayish green. So those are the 2 commercial ones that I got because they were red. This one is one that I rescued from at the kind of a place where it was disappearing at the farm. The weeds had taken over, weed trees. It was under a Cortland apple tree. And there were clumps with lots of little tiny buds. And so last year, later than I probably should have, I dug up one of those, divided it into 10 little sections, and planted that to fill out the asparagus row where there was room at the end. And despite heat and drought and whatever, I did carry a lot of water to it, but I got it going, and by last fall there were 7 robust plants there. I lost 3. This spring, at the right time, I went in and filled in those 3 spots, and they're cute little plants that the others are trying to smother out with their giant leaves. But anyway, this is a variety that came from my mother's best friend, Florence Buckman. And she had that, and her garden moved different places over the years, and she always had this variety. It is really tender. It's really succulent. The only thing it's not is super red.
Gotcha.
But I thought it was worth rescuing from the weeds in honor of Florence, who she told me over and over was there as I was born. She was not a midwife per se, but she was my mother's friend who was there.
Wow.
There was in fact a doctor who made house calls back in
during the doily days.
Back in doily days. Exactly. Exactly.
Love
where I
it
was
when a
headed.
reference comes back around.
It's the theme of the show.
A midwife, and yeah, that's over 100 years old, you say.
Well,
It could be.
yeah. Mom and Florence would be like 106 or something this
Wow.
year. They were the same age.
That's so great.
I love stories like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
heirloom plants are
They're
fantastic.
amazing. I moved some of my grandmother's peonies from my mom and dad's now house, which was my grandparents' house, to my house. And I just,
Yeah.
the stories that come with it are just really,
Yeah, my spider plant's 160 years old.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
my great-grandmother's grandmother.
Wow.
Yeah. I think my mom's going to correct me on this, but
When you get
yeah,
home, there's going to
my
be
sister has the mother plant. Like they didn't entrust the nursery owner with the original plant. They had to give me a side
you
cutting.
get a
A mere
cutting.
clone.
I'm an insurance policy. I've always been an insurance policy.
Too funny.
So both of these things, both the asparagus and the rhubarb, really are heavy feeders, and asparagus, I'm not so sure of. Rhubarb, well-aged manure is what it loves.
What's your favorite way to eat it? You mentioned cooking it. Is it because I just walked
My
around the
favorite way
yard
to eat
chewing on a
rhubarb is for
stalk.
somebody else to eat it.
Oh, you're not a fan.
Strawberry rhubarb pie.
It's a waste of strawberries.
Well,
I can detect it.
No
at one,
shortage of
I can
opinions
detect
on
it
this
at
show.
1 part per million, and reject it.
It's a no, huh?
I think what happened is I was at Florence's, as a matter of fact, and my good friend, who was kind of he was a cool kid, and he was over there pulling a stalk of Florence's rhubarb, which he shouldn't have been. It wasn't his. And so he talked me into doing the same thing, and he was just chewing on his like it was celery. I bit into that, and it cured me forever. So
I
there
used
you
to go
go.
over and get stalks out of a neighbor's yard. That's the well, in the pie, but
Yeah.
that's the only way I've eaten it. Is
Yeah,
just,
sugar is definitely a key ingredient to the rhubarb
oh
family.
yes, oh yes.
My friend would have, if he'd had it, would have put salt on it.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know
Never heard
people that salt watermelon too.
Oh,
so-
yeah. I grew up with salt
there's-
water. Wow.
There's like a crumb cake that my sister makes that every once in a while she grumbles that I would love it if I tried it. And
Well, Donna, you know I will always try it. So
That's right.
you know.
maybe next time.
Maybe next time. Maybe next time. Okay, wonderful. All right, Chuck, not Chuck. Shane,
Other Chuck.
Yeah.
the other Chuck.
All right, so I brought something in a little different form. I brought something called ironite. So one of the things that we have problems with are our river birch and our pin oaks get a lot of chlorosis. It's really a huge problem. When I'm
What is
driving through the
chlorosis? What is that?
that's a great question. So it's the yellowing of the leaves. And you see it all the time in river birch, especially when you're driving through the neighborhood. The leaves should be green and they're just a bright yellow. And pin oaks, that's why we don't really grow too many pin oaks anymore, is because they get chlorosis so quickly. The old running joke when I was a kid is if you plant a pin oak, you drive the truck you brought the oak in into the hole and bury them together because they need so much iron. That's how much iron they need. So it's been an issue. So ironite really solves that. It's one of the few, there's chelated iron and there's other forms of iron, but it just doesn't work quite as fast and as well as ironite does. And what I found with ironite is it doesn't burn. So you really can't put too much. I don't challenge anybody to try, but in general, you can't mess it up. And the other thing I found is when I spread it around my trees, my grass was almost gray, black, green. So then I thought, I should read the label. And so I read the label.
Now you see why he didn't get the mother plant, right?
That would be kind of the reverse of what extension people would recommend.
I mean, my wife jokes when I get a bicycle, I don't read the instructions.
No,
I just start putting
just
it
put it
together.
together.
And so ironite, I've just learned over the years, you're using urea, this is how you apply it. It's perfect for grass. You can't really burn your grass. When we're putting our fertilizer on there, we're doing a lot more liquid. But in the old days when you were a kid, your parents would not let you put it on because they know those corners were going to be so slow and it was going to just put lines and burn your entire yard. This won't do that.
Interesting.
It will get darker green, but if you spread it evenly across your lawn, your neighbors will think, who have you hired? What's your secret? It is the most beautiful dark green you'll ever see. So that's what I bought this for. I don't have any pin oak or river birch, but in my front yard, I'm going to put this out, and in about 10 days, my neighbors are going to ask me
They're
who my
going to
lawn
be so
service
jealous.
is. Yeah.
So jealous.
And it's a little harder to find. The only two places, Country Arbors does have it, but we have trouble getting it sometimes, and Lowe's seems to be a carrier for it. So it's a little harder to find bigger bags as well, but it really is. If you have a pin oak or river birch, you should be applying this. If you want to make your yard look amazing, it's a great product.
Now, how do you go about the business of feeding or supplementing trees? What do you use the drip line?
On something like this, it's per square foot. So you do the circumference of the trees and put so many pounds per height of the tree. Sometimes they'll do diameter. The instructions do a pretty good job, and I think they're more square footage on this one.
Gotcha.
Again, the positive is if you overdo it, you're not going to burn it. We don't want to be putting the whole bag, but on a giant pin oak, it would take this whole bag, but you do spread it amongst the roots under the drip line and in.
I've always wondered that. When people talk about watering, especially young trees, do you water at the base? Do you water a little farther out?
Yeah, there's a combination of things. We normally, it's a combination of how aggressive the roots are, what kind of tree it is, how tall it is, how wide the circumference is.
Gotcha.
It is really hard to give watering instructions to people because calendar just doesn't work anymore. The weather is all over the board as far as rain.
Yes.
We got tons of inches, and I water it 3 times a week. I go, it just rained 3 inches. You don't look at the calendar. Look at the amount. And I think we're going to get technology that will eventually help. I mean, we already have little rain gauges and things of that nature. But eventually there's going to be something outside that just literally tells you when to water because it's going to capture the rain, or it's going to look on the internet and see how much your area got rain. We're going to be helped, but right now we're still
fumbling.
We still have to look out and see how much the weather, the little rain gauge said. Yeah, it's a tough, but you do have to water. And again, I'll say this. This is my watering instructions. Water it in deep, let it dry out, and then water it in deep again. That's how that happens is a whole nother ballgame. But that is the essence of watering plants. You want them to search for. You want the roots to search for water. That's how it develops roots. If it's always wet, it's not going to grow roots.
It's not going to work hard.
But if the roots are out there and you feed them, they'll be super happy and grow more and then start looking for more. So that's kind of the process. You're kind of teasing. You're putting a carrot out there with water.
Tree hacks.
Yeah.
So this doesn't need to be injected like some of the fertilizers.
That's
it's
a great
surface applied.
It is
right?
a surface applied. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a surface application.
Because I know some people really like to get out there with the probe and inject
I see
things,
people watering, getting that thing in there.
Or get the little stakes that you drive into the ground. It really makes you feel like
Or
you're
even
doing something.
non-arborists drilling a hole in there and just pounding in a cap. I said, "Are you really qualified to be drilling holes in your tree?" Like,
No.
I think we're less than we started right here.
Let's see. Barbara sent in an email, Barbara Baker. She says, my son has a severe problem with thistles in his flower bed and other planting areas around the property. What can be used to get rid of them?
Yeah, so this is a very common thing, especially in Illinois. Here's the issue. If you pull a thistle, it multiplies. So you pull it out and down in the roots, now it has several new starts. So it will actually increase in size and quantity by pulling it by hand. Roundup does not also work. If you spray it, it knocks it down and it comes right back. So it's a temporary. So there's a product called Stinger, and I'd have to look at the trade, or that's the trade name. I don't know the actual name of the chemical. Okay. I'm not sure if it's over the counter, but if you Google Stinger thistles, it is specifically made for thistles and thistles only.
Okay.
So it really does a great job. If you find anybody in the horticultural space that has problems, that will be the product. It has gone private label now, so now you don't have to buy the trade, and it's gotten much cheaper. But that's what you want to look for out there. I don't know. Do you know of any non-chemical way on thistles? Like, I don't know any home remedies. I'm sure people will write in. Honestly, if we found them, we would be using them.
If they're in amongst other plants, it's really difficult. If it were, say, in a cornfield or something, you can go in, cut them off multiple times, and starve that underground root system,
so it has no energy.
And gradually decrease them, maybe not eradicate them.
Yeah.
But it's tough because with the chemical, like you say, if the Roundup burns them off, that's just as bad as pulling them.
It is. It just
you
gets
need
the
something
roots.
that gets on it, translocates, kills the roots slowly, and then gets the whole thing.
Absolutely.
So that's.
And if you have it in a bed, you can use the Stinger product. I do paintbrush taped onto a stick, and I dip it in paint. I dip it in paint. That way I don't spray and get it on everything else, because it will burn other plants. It's not made to kill them, but I'm sure it would not good for them.
So either way, you've got your work cut out for you. It sounds like.
Thistles are, if you ask me, the worst for a nurseryman, weed-wise, thistles are by far the worst. There's nothing.
And she said it's a severe problem.
And the Canada thistle is the main culprit, because some of the bull thistles and some of the other things are kind of biennial, and they can reseed themselves and be a problem, but they don't have that perennial root system.
And I was told that it's illegal not to get rid of them.
They've been a noxious weed forever.
Yeah.
And back when farmers were in charge, it was illegal not to try to control them.
Yeah.
Now you drive down the interstate, and they're everywhere, and that seed just gets up on the air and floats. And
our farmers always let us know our fields had thistle in it. They were very good scouters. They didn't want anything near them. They go, "You better get that before it gets to seed."
Get that before it becomes a problem.
Yes, sir.
We've got about 2 minutes left, and this is just kind of a toss-up question. Peg Man wants to know what type of hoses that you guys use that work for you in the garden and don't kink and get on your last nerve. So
we've got one that we love at the nursery I have at home. The brand is Flexzilla. Flexzilla, like Godzilla, but Flex. They're a bright yellow color. They're the best hoses as far as cold and winding up and ease of use and light. They're sturdy. They're amazing hoses. The two issues we've had is if you keep them in the sun, they actually will get a little fungus or like green moss inside of it.
Oh.
From the heating in, they must allow some light through.
Gotcha.
So if you just lay them out in the sun, that will be an issue. And when you're not using an end that filters it, it's not a problem. It'll just come out. But at the nursery, we would hate it because it would fill up the nozzle.
Sure.
I've talked to them a million times and they say they have improved that. So maybe in the last couple of years they've done something that doesn't happen to not let the light through. And then the other thing is they'll get some discoloration on the outside. I don't know if that's mold or what's going on. They're kind of unsightly. But as far as use and
Those are the ones,
folding
huh?
and lightness, there's nothing close to them.
Flexzilla.
Flexzilla. They do. I've talked to the manufacturers and I thank them. You have an amazing hose. Well, I'm going to give you an 8 out of 10 because of the last two things.
That's a solid review.
Yeah, no, 8's not bad.
Chuck, do you have a fave?
Not really. I'm with the lady that sent the question.
She's in the you're in the market as well.
The cheap ones I buy a kink and
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
and leak at the hydrant.
Yes.
And if they don't do all that, they weigh 1,000 pounds. And the ones that curl up, that expand, that you
Yes.
see on TV.
All the gimmicks.
Well, I look at that. They go through all of that and how wonderful they are, and then it's like $1 zillion for 25 feet, and it's like, geez, if I want to go
Yeah.
200 feet.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't have gardens like you.
Yeah.
We are out of time, gentlemen. It goes so fast. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions for us, you can send them in to yourgarden@gmail.com or search for us on Facebook. Just look for Mid-American Gardener. We'll see you next time. Good night.